Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Tipsy Goat. My name is Edwin and today we're looking at Villainous Wealth in a commander. Kotis the Fangkeeper is a 4-mana Sultai card with Indestructible, a 2/1 zombie warrior that says whenever deals combat damage to a player, exile the top X cards of their library, where X is the amount of damage dealt. You may cast any number of spells with mana value X or less from among them without paying their mana cost. So Villainous Wealth also had an X, but the X was mana you put into it. This X is the amount of combat damage you're doing. So if you're dealing 5 combat damage, you're looking at 5 cards, and all the cards with mana value 5 or less, you're going to cast without paying its mana cost. So just last year we've seen Gonti, which also was a Sultai commander that stole cards, and Felix in the same precon. They wanted to go white with a lot of unblockable creatures. This one doesn't only want you to be unblockable, it also wants you to do a lot of damage. So it's basically a Voltron commander, but with a steel theme. So since we are in Sultai commanders, we can use equipment because they are colorless. We can use counters because we are in green, and we can use auras because we are in green and blue as well. Since we are not in white, we do not really have the payoff for the equipment, but we can still use all of the equipment that have a low equip cost. You can either pick one of the 3, or you can just say whatever I have laying around the house I'm gonna put into Kotis, so you can make a really cheap deck without really having to buy a lot of cards. Or you can just say I want the most effective out of all of the 3, so I can make Kotis as strong as possible. That is what I have done. Kotis wants to build you a lot of power, and he wants you to build Evasion. And also, since he is indestructible, we do not need a lot of protection, but blue has ways to get it back to your hand, black has ways to sacrifice a creature, and white has ways to exile your creature. So even though it has indestructible, there are still a lot of ways to get it off the board. That's why we're building a lot of protection as well. So before we start this video, I want to remind you that most of the people watching this haven't subscribed yet. If you haven't, it's a really easy and fast way to support the channel and to make sure you're never going to miss a new deck tech for the upcoming sets. So to give you a better look of what we're doing with Kotis, let's look at the key cards. So first off, we want to deal damage. Strongback is an aura that says equip abilities you activate the target enchanted creature, cost 3 less to cast, and enchanted creature gets +2/+2 for each aura and equipment attached to it. This card is already an aura, so at least you will have +2/+2, and everything after for a hugely reduced amount of mana. Forgotten Ancient, maybe you have forgotten about it, because this card is really ancient. Whenever a player casts a spell, you may put a +1 counter on Forgotten Ancient, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you move any number of +1/+1 counters from Forgotten Ancient onto other creatures. So if your opponents have cast like 3 spells in one rotation, you get 3 counters, but that is a really low number. Let's say they've cast 11 spells. You're gonna put 11 counters on Kotis. We have Excalibur, that is just a +10/+0, and we have Belt of Giant Strength that says equipped creature has base power and toughness 10/10. Now to make sure that we don't get blocked by a 1/1, Aqueous Form just gives it unblockable, and Winged Boots gives it flying and ward 4. Now if we deal all this damage, we have 2 copy spells in Strionic Resonator and Felix 5 Boots that says if a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time, so we just get another Kotis trigger. And then we have 2 cards as payoff for casting spells you don't own. Tasha, the Witch Queen, says whenever you cast a spell you don't own, create a black demon creature token that is 3/3. And Brain Stealer Dragon says whenever a non-land permanent an opponent owns enters the battlefield under your control, they lose life equal to its mana value. And finally, of course, we want to protect our commander. Cards like Swivel Boot and Champion's Helm give it hexproof. Since board wipes get around hexproof, we also have the old school Negate, Counterspell and Mana Drain. Now that you know what gets Kotis rolling, let's look at the deck ratios. So we have 2 cards to copy. We have 12 cards that either give counters or have a counter payoff. We have 11 pieces to ramp. We only have 6 card draw pieces to make sure that we get enough damage on the board. Of course, you could lose some damage pieces and get some more card draw pieces instead. This way it's a little bit more of a gamble, but you could be faster as well because you just have more pieces to deal damage. We have 13 pieces of removal, of which let's say half is counter spells and the other half is board wipes or target removal. And we have 15 pieces to protect our commander. So looking at the pieces that give counters, Evolutionary Escalation says at the beginning of your upkeep, put 3 +1/+1 counters on target creature you control and the same amount of counters on target creature an opponent controls, which in Commander obviously is very fun. Innkeeper's Talent, of course, we've all seen it, very good. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, permanents you control with counters on the Mav Ward 1, and if you would put 1 or more counters on that permanent or player, put twice that many on that permanent or player instead. Grizzly Bell, we've just seen this guy in beta as well. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, and you can pay 5 mana to double the number of +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. It doesn't say tap, so you could do it multiple times in a turn. Ozolith, that says if 1 or more +1/+1 counters would be put on an artifact or creature you control, that many +1 are put on it instead. Bone Saber says whenever attacks, put 4 +1/+1 counters on it. Communal Brewing from the Blue Burrow Precon says when enters any number of target opponents, each draw a card. So let's say 3 opponents draw a card. Put an ingredient counter on Communal Brewing, then another for each card drawn this way. So 1 initially and then another 3. So we have 4 counters on it. Whenever you cast a creature spell, that creature enters with additional +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the number of ingredient counters. So each creature enters with 4 counters on it. I really like the Sword Cycle. They are pretty expensive cards and they might not be there for everyone. It's really easy to get rid of them and just add something else that deals damage. But I like the sword just because of the feeling it gives. Like you're playing old school Magic, you're giving protection from white and blue, you're putting a counter on it, then you're proliferating. It's not doing all that much, but I just really like to add all the swords to this deck. Tribute to the World Tree. If a creature enters, draw a card if its power is 3 or greater. Otherwise, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. Our commander is a 2/1, so we're just giving 2 +1/+1 counters. But of course, exiling all the cards that our commander sees. There are gonna be creatures as well, so we're drawing cards or we're putting counters on it. Maybe you're dealing damage to a elf deck or a dragon deck. A lot of creatures are gonna come in, a lot of counters are gonna put on the elves, or a lot of cards are gonna be drawn from the dragons. And then if we have all those counters, Court of Caring Brick says, ETB, you become the monarch. At the beginning of your upkeep, distribute 2 +1/+1 counters among up to 2 target creatures. Then if you're the monarch, double the number of +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. So if you're the monarch, bam, a lot of counters. If you're not the monarch, just 2 counters. The other way we're pushing our commander is with equipments or auras. Belt of Giant Strength, make your commander a 10/10. Ancestral Mask says enchanted creature gets +2/+2 for each other enchantment on the battlefield. Our deck has 14 enchantments, so it can see 13 other enchantments. Of course, your commander is gonna exile some enchantments of your opponent's decks as well. So this just keeps on getting bigger. Give it double strike, give it trample lifelink, give it protection, give it double strike trample, all of the good stuff. And then of course we're gonna make it unblockable. We have Aqueous Form to give it unblockable. Same for Brotherhood Regalia, Psychic Paper, Silver Shroud Costume. And then we have Kite Sail, Wings, Fayflight and Winged Boots that all give it flying. Trailblazer's Boots just gives your commander non-basic land walk. which means it can't be blocked as long as defending player controls a non-basic land. And yeah, we have some tramplers as well. Now, if we have a really big Voltron commander, we want to protect it. So we have a lot of counter spells. We have ways to give it Shroud or Hexproof. We can give it protection from black, green, white and blue, and also from instants and sorceries. We need some ways to draw those spells. So we have Mystic Remora, we have Black Mark the Connection, Phyrexian Arena, Read the Bones, I always like this one. And also Tasha that says draw a card with its +1. And for each opponent, exile up to 1 target instant or sorcery card from that player's graveyard and put a page counter on it. Then it also says for -3, you may cast a spell from among cards in exile with page counters on them without paying its mana cost. So you get to play an instant or sorcery from your opponent's graveyard as well. And of course we need a way to pay for these spells. We have some mana dorks. Bloom Tender you can basically always include whenever your commander is not that expensive and has multiple colors. Our commander has a lot of protection, so we're gonna make sure that it stays. And Bloom Tender will always tap for 3 mana. Vegas already gives it a counter, and the rest is just really cheap ramp. We're not gonna build 4 or 5 mana ramp because we really want as many cheap ramp spells as we can to get our commander out by turn 3 or 4, so we can swing by turn 4 or 5. We do have a couple of removal spells as well. Basically any card that says destroy all creatures is very good since your commander has instructable, so you could add more of those. I like to keep it a little bit more aggro, so there's not going to be too much board wipes or targeted removal. But Damnation, Cyclonic Reef, Raise the Palisade, they're all going to be one-sided board wipes, so they're very strong. Culling Ritual just gives you a lot of mana. It's basically there because of the mana, not really of the board wipe. So there you have it, 100 cards for Kotis the Fangkeeper to give it a lot of power, to make it unblockable and to protect it. And if we can swing, we're gonna be the best elf deck at the table, we're gonna be the best artifact deck at the table. It doesn't really matter what your opponents are doing, we're gonna beat them with their own strategy. So by the time this video comes out, we may or may have not released a gameplay with Kotis the Fangkeeper yet. I can say that the guest is playing Kotis in our upcoming gameplay, and boy did he have a good game. If you are interested in building Kotis the Fangkeeper, you should really check out the gameplay to see how it does in action. So I am giving Kotis an S. And I rarely give an S to a commander because an S means it's gonna be an all-star, it's gonna be played by a lot of people for a very long time, and I really do believe that Kotis is an S. He is a Voltron commander, which means you are spending a lot of resources on one creature, and a lot of the time it's just to deal damage, but we're in Sultai, so we're gaining a lot of value just by exiling our opponent's library and casting all of the spells that we see. So you're depleting your own resources, but you're getting so much back, and that is what you want in a Voltron commander. And I have to say that I'm giving this an S because Villainous Wealth is one of my favorite cards of all time. Anytime that I can cast this card in my Remels Dragon Engine deck, I'm just having so much fun and basically ending the game. So Voltron is one of my favorite categories that I have been, that really rewards you for doing so. So I really like this deck, and I hope you like this deck as well. If you did, give a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. For now, I would really like to thank you for your time and see you on the next one.